Okay, make sure you watch this video to the very end. You should be doing that anyway out of support for me. But I'm going to give you information on how you can win a really cool thing. So, there's your teaser. What a YouTuber I am. I will give you a really cool way to win a really cool thing that is very, very easy. So the Mariners don't play today. They get the day off before beginning a series against the Rockies. I thought it would be fun to do something fun. Let's take a look at what I believe to be the 10 biggest hits of all time in Seattle Mariner history. And let's be completely honest here. There are not a lot of candidates. There are some very fun moments of being a Seattle Mariner fan, but there's not a ton of real clutch moments. There's a couple in particular that stand out. But this was not a list that's just chock full of you know, stuff like the Yankees and the Cardinals and Dodgers have. They just don't. But there is some fun stuff to talk about. Let me give you some hits that just missed the list. I considered Julio's walk-off versus Atlanta. That was such a big hit and such a punctuation on how well they were playing. I think it absolutely deserved consideration. Vince Coleman's single in the one-game playoff in 1995. Massive hit. Massive hit. Everybody's going to talk about something that's definitely on this list, but that's the hit that gave him that lead. And honestly, Randy only really needed the one. I know they gave up a home run to Tony Phillips later in that game, but I think he probably would have been able to get through that with just a one. Jay Buhner's homer in game 3 of the ALCS gave him a 2-1 lead. I really thought as a 12-year-old that meant we were going to the World Series. They did not win another game, but obviously a massive hit in a time that I'll just never forget. Talk about that more. JP Crawford's 3-run double in game 2 of last year's wild card series. Look, in terms of like the actual result, there's been very few more clutch hits in Seattle Mariner history. I do think you have to take a knock off of it because of the fact that it was almost entirely luck. And luck is great. Luck is great. He made contact, and good for the Mariners getting the bases loaded in that situation. That certainly helped. But there is no denying that it was not exactly the most well-struck baseball. Mike Cameron's 4th homer. That really was the one I wanted to include, but there's just a few more bigger plays. That was a regular season game that, you know, it tied one of the best records in baseball, but I struggle with it being ahead of these hits that I'm going to go. And number 11 on the list was Griffey's single in the 11th of game 5, which is in hindsight one maybe I should have in here, but there's just a couple more that I like a little bit. All right, let's go. We'll go in reverse order. All right, so at number 10, I have Edgar's homer in game 1 of the 2000 ALDS in the 10th inning. Mariners were tied 4-4. It was massive, and they ended up, it becomes a little less massive because John Olerud hits a 2-run homer later in that inning, but it was just Edgar being clutch again, as he was so many times in his career. He may have a couple more spots on this list, but I thought that was like a huge series opening win because you do win the next 2, but it really kind of just set the mark that this team was going to win that series. Massive hit. Joey Cora at number 9, the bunt. We should really call it the bunt. I don't know if people call it the bunt or not. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, it's in game 5 of the 1995 ALDS, excuse me, against the Yankees. Does a perfect drag bunt, moves or maneuvers around Don Mattingly's glove, puts the tying run on first base, and really sets up all of the magic. Without that bunt, let's say he does get out. Yeah, Griffey singles, as you know, and something else happens, and we have a tie ball game. But that was the winner, and it doesn't happen without Cora's bunt. Magical moment. Number 8, Ichiro breaks the hit record. And look, this is an important record, and it's one that I really enjoyed watching, especially live and seeing the family of Sisler there. And it was also the benefit of it and the detriment of it are the same thing. The Mariners stunk that year. So the benefit of that is we really got to focus on the fact that that was the big thing, that his single was the big moment of that year. The detriment of that is the Mariners stunk, and it was hard to really think back on it as nostalgically as I think you'd want to. You know what I mean? Like huge, unbelievable record. One that I think probably will get broken again someday, but I think it's going to take a while. Yeah. I mean, gosh, it's amazing that he only has the one hit on here. At number 7, it's a hit, it's a hit technically. Um, Carlos Guillen squeeze bunt in Game 3 of the 2000 ALDS. Look, a walk-off hit to win a series is going to be high on the Seattle Mariner all-time hit list. Wasn't a perfect bunt. It was good enough. I love the fact that it scored Rickey Henderson. Rickey Henderson's one of my all-time favorite players. But look, that literally won them the series. 3-0, sure. But how many hits do the Mariners have as a walk-off to advance to another round? I believe the answer to that is 2. And it would probably be higher on this list if it wasn't a drag bunt, really a squeeze bunt, safety squeeze. But it was big. It was big, and I loved Carlos Guillen. Got done wrong by this organization, in my personal opinion. Love that he went on to become such a good player. He was a good player in Seattle, but he became a really good player after he joined Detroit. Yep. It's not the sexiest thing in the world, but a drag bunt to win a series in the playoffs is pretty big. Number 6, Adam Frazier double, Game 2 of the wild card series. I mean, look, there's a bunch of big hits in that game, including that technically Crawford 3-run double. But Adam Frazier's the one who brought it home. It isn't the walk-off, but it is the run that gave them the win in that extra inning. What an unbelievable comeback. Scores big dumper. I mean, look, Adam Frazier stunk here. But Adam Frazier will always have a special place in a lot of people's hearts here because of that hit. And he was great that day. He was great. Yeah, he squared up the baseball off a bunch of people. Mariners don't win that game without Adam Frazier. So, as frustrating a player as he was when he was here, because it did not work out. He was an okay defensive player, but like to say he didn't hit for any sense of power or really average, it's an understatement. It's just fact of the matter, but he will always have that, and I will always thank him for that because what a comeback and what a win and what a hit. Number 5. This is when we get into the good stuff, baby. So at number 5, I have Edgar's grand slam in Game 4 of the 1995 ALDS. It's probably the most famous, second most famous call for Dave Niehaus, but it's the one who put him on the map because what happens in Game 5 happens later. The get out the rye bread and mustard grandma. I mean, everybody did that after that. Everybody. Hell, started magazines. It started lots of things. Grand Salami became such a big thing. And it may have been a little bit of a thing before Dave Niehaus, but he really kind of made it a famous thing. And it was a huge hit. It broke that game open. It basically guaranteed that they were going to play Game 5 after losing the first 2 games to get that off of John Wetland and just destroyed that baseball to center field. What a player. I love Edgar so much. He thinks I'm a cool grandson, by the way. All right. At number 4 is our last. No, it's not. We have one more regular season one after that. Griffey's walk-off homer in August to beat the Yankees in 1995. A lot of 1995 here. You can't blame me. So at the time, the Mariners were 54-55, and things were not looking good. They were 11 and a half games out of the lead for the AL West. And Griffey just smokes a baseball into right field, got out of here in like a second and a half at most. Of course, he had a lot of those in the Kingdom because right field was very friendly confines, but it was just such a big hit, and it kind of started the okay, there might be something with this team. You have to remember Griffey had missed so much time with that wrist injury. And I could just remember, even as a 12-year-old, I can remember that it was like, okay, yeah, there's a lot of stuff to make up here, but this could be special. And I also believe, and I should have done research on this, I didn't. I believe that was Griffey's first ever walk-off homer. I believe it was, and that just adds to the specialness of it. But really, there's a lot of great moments in 1995, but it all kind of starts with that walk-off homer to me, because they played unbelievable baseball from that point on. Unbelievable. All right. These next 2 and 3, I think you could put in any order you want, but I do think they are, in my personal opinion, the biggest hits in Mariners history. Okay. So at number 3, I have Big Dumper's walk-off homer to send them into the playoffs. Okay. There is some bias here. There's some recency bias. There's some bias that I was at the game. It's actually at the game for 3 of these moments. I was there for Carlos Guillen's squeeze. I was there for Big Dumper, and I was there for number 1. The recency bias, the being there bias, and just the fact that it had been so flippin' long waiting for this team to make the playoffs. Now, there are some negatives to putting this homer so high on the list. The Mariners were going to make the playoffs, right? Like, their magic number was 1 with like 6 games left to play. They were going to, hell, they won the very next day. I know, because I was there. It easily could be moved down this list. And it was against a terrible Oakland team that really wasn't trying. But just knowing how I felt after that homer, there's no way it's not a top 3 Seattle Mariner hit. There's no way. There is no way it's not. It's a magical moment that I have to thank my buddy Jordan Schusterman of Suspetta's Family Barbecue again for allowing me to come with him, because I will never forget it. It was so awesome. And getting to hear Scott Service yell out Big Dumper. That'll be high to me on the all-time just Mariner moments, like, period. But it doesn't happen without that homer, a pinch hit homer in the bottom of the 9th to send the Seattle Mariners to the postseason for the first time since 2001. How do you not have that high on the list, huh? Impressive. All right. Number 2 is the Luis Sojo Little League homer. The Mariners were up 1-0. Randy Johnson was only going to give up that 1 run, and it was in, if it wasn't in the 9th, it was definitely in the 9th, and it was off Tony Phillips. So look, it broke that game open, and it put the Mariners into the postseason for the first time in their history. Once that hit happened, there was no doubt that the Mariners were going to win, because you certainly weren't going to get 5 runs off Randall K. Johnson that night. And look, it was some comedy of errors there from the normally good Los Angeles Angels at that time, California Angels. Defense, JT Snow doesn't get to that baseball. Mark Langston was a pretty good fielder. Some bad throws. I mean, I just remember, so I have to give credit to mommy and daddy here. They let me go home to watch that game. And I mean, I was just so my parents at that time were paralegals, so they had this little office set up with a television to watch, and it had the big TV. Don't know why we didn't have the big TV in the living room, but it doesn't matter. But I just remember just running around that room, just so excited that the Seattle Mariners were going to play real life playoff baseball for the first time in my life. And a ton of credit too. This hit, things get amplified by moments. There's no doubt about it. And Rick Riz's call, which I didn't hear at the time, but have heard a billion times now. So perfect. So perfect. Yeah. I almost said something there that I regretted, but it was just special. It was just special. All right. Number one. Do I even have to say it? It's the double. It it's the biggest moment in Seattle Mariners history. And there are some big moments in Seattle Mariners history, so this is not completely damning with faint praise, but there's no way you can have anything but the double. I have the Dave Niehaus call memorized. And I've written this story a few times, and I'm going to do my best not to tear up. So I'm at that game with my dad. And my father and I had kind of a tumultuous relationship growing up. And the day before, excuse me, 2 days before, we went to game 3 and we got in a huge fight, and it was about the fact that we couldn't find his car. We just flat out could not find his car after the game. And we were miserable. Miserable. That drive home from Seattle to Lacey is a long one. It was a much longer one this time. Funny thing is that we couldn't find a Geo lime green tracker. And I was upset because my dad was parking fairly far away and I was lazy. But that's one of the reasons we couldn't find it, is because we did park so far away. So anyway, we got tickets for, we had tickets for game 3 and game 5. And I was honestly kind of hoping that, I hate saying this out loud, that the Mariners were going to lose game 4, because I really didn't want to go with my dad. I did not. So they do win. And obviously, I'm not going to completely just, blow off the biggest game in Seattle Mariner history, as much as I was upset with my dad. So we go and we're talking a little bit here and there. And, it's an electric atmosphere, electric, probably the most electric atmosphere of any game I've been to, outside of maybe the World Baseball Classic. Yeah, World Baseball Classic won that too. Anyway, we're talking a little bit, and Randy comes in and he gets the job done, but he does give up the run in the 11th. And I'll just be honest with you, I start bawling, I'm crying. I'm just sobbing because I can't believe they're not going to win. I can't believe it. And my dad took my head, he pointed it up, and he said, they're going to win this game, right? If they hadn't have won, maybe this wouldn't be as special of a moment. But there was something about that comfort. And of course, line down the left field line, it scores a couple of runs. Mariners win. That was a big day for Chris. It was probably the day that cemented I was going to do this for a living. It took me a long time to get there to actually end up doing it for a living, but that was a big day. That was a big day. Hopefully the next time I cry on this thing will be when the Mariners win the World Series. Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about how you can win a really cool item. So, all you have to do on this video is hit like, hit subscribe, comment with what you think is your favorite, not necessarily best, favorite Seattle Mariner hit of all time. And as soon as we get to 400 subscribers, which is not that many more, as soon as we get to 400 subscribers, I will give away this Matt Brash rookie card. It's numbered to 10. It's autographed. It's from Panini National Treasures. Look how disgusting that patch is. Isn't that cool? Wouldn't you like that? And all you have to do is hit like, hit subscribe, comment with your favorite hit, and then we'll random it to whoever. It won't even be the best response. You can literally just say Edgar and get this card. But yeah, what's your favorite hit? And please hit like, please hit subscribe. And it's a great way to win something for doing absolutely nothing but showing that you support this channel. Thanks, guys.